uh, I feel like a rookie all the time. When I see guys like you, I'm like, holy shit, man! You have so much things to learn. All right, so guys and girls, hello everybody, literally and spiritually. Hey, hey. So this is Jason Wolf from the Hellenic Wolf podcast. My name is Jason, by the way, and it comes from iason, which is a Greek word for the healer. Iasonas means the healer, which is where Jason comes from. An important note. And today, I mean, you know what I'm talking about in this channel. You know that I'm talking about two main things that I'm interested in for the better part of my decade, the past decade, which is water and movement. And I think these two things are very critical for our development as humans, and I think they are under explored. That is my estimate. And today, we have a magician today, a movement magician, in my humble opinion, at least. Maybe I don't know nothing about nothing, which is the truth. But we have a guy today that, I mean, you can see him on your screens. Hello, everybody. Hello, Jared. Let me just introduce you as Jared. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me, Jason.
It's my pleasure and my honor and everything else because, man, the things you are doing on your Instagram, like I was telling you offline, like I'm like, how? Like, how? Literally, I'm like, oh, whenever I see you on your Instagram, I'm like, can I go 10% of this guy? Can I reach that level at some point? I
Oh
will be
man,
happy.
too much. You flatter me. You can
Oh,
be.
it's the truth, man. It's no flattery. It's just the truth. Anyways, man. So I'm guessing that people are already intrigued about. Okay, what is this guy all about? So what are you doing right now? Before we get into your story, what are you? Can you give us a short introduction about what are you about and who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Jared, and my name is full name is Jared Michael Thomas, as you can see there, and that's obviously also what I go by on both my Instagram and YouTube channels. So, if you're looking those up, it's just my name, Jared Michael Thomas, and I'm a longtime martial artist and movement explorer that had a lot of things come together, particularly around the pandemic, that had been a culmination of a lot of experiences I had in life. And in many ways, it felt like I jumped on a rocket ship that went into a time portal and ended up somewhere else. Because, I guess if I'm a magician to the point that you made, there's a lot of magic that I still don't totally understand that continues to amaze me day after day. But nevertheless, I find myself caught up in the rabbit hole of Alice in Wonderland in terms of what I continue to explore and discover every day. So, but yeah, I'm a longtime mover. I was a wrestler in high school that turned into a martial artist in college. I did a lot of jujitsu and grappling, judo. I've done jeet kune do and kali and several martial arts in my past. I was a MMA fighter for a period of time when I was in college, and I've done, like I said, I did jujitsu for several years even thereafter. I've taught kickboxing classes, and then one day I bought a steel mace, and then I hit that overdrive, if you will. And so, yeah, it's everything at this point. So much of what I do is based in what I call flow. From the most general perspective, it's fluidity of movement, but it's really based on three things: your posture, momentum, and the use of gravity. And those three things is how you can begin to find the channels of movement that create the efficiency and the magic of what you see. Because it's so funny, like seeing it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't seem like it's real. Sometimes I don't even feel like it's real, like after I see it and after I've recorded something. And I can tell you a little story about how I started to do that, because I kind of created a rule in that first year that I started doing this that I've sort of held to ever since, but I don't even really think about it much anymore. So,
Wow. Yeah, man, that was a cliffhanger. What's up?
yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So, when I started doing this, all right. So I going into 2020, I had an Instagram, which was still just my name, Jared Michael Thomas. No YouTube channel. I was not a social media person. I didn't have any followers. I wasn't building uh, a library of movement of content. None of that, right? And then after the pandemic hit and we all went into lockdowns, I bought a 15-pound steel mace off of Amazon because my kickboxing class that I was teaching got wiped out. And so I was like, I'm going to try one of these things. So I bought a mace, and then I started finding some other people online that I was learning from and emulating a lot of different people on YouTube and Instagram. And I decided to start recording myself in my own time. And in fact, there's actually quite a bit, maybe about a month's worth of recordings that have never made it to Instagram that I'll probably reveal one day, of like my very, very like first few 2 or 3 weeks with the mace. And it's
Yeah.
so funny to see how things evolve. But my first rule of it all was basically that when I would record something, it was like, okay, if this doesn't look cool, I'm not going to post it. I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to, it seems somewhat superficial looking back on it, but there was a kind of aesthetic that I knew that I wanted to achieve, especially after seeing some other really great movers out there. And I thought, well, if I can't meet even whatever my standard was at the time, then I'm not going to post anything about it. And so I just kept working and I kept using the mace, and I just knew that there was something there. I could feel it and I could see in others. And so eventually I just kept using I used a lot of music, especially back then, to really drive the patterns that I learned and ingrained. And so it was like I think early June of 2020. So it's not quite 3 years that I made my first post with
Wow.
anything flow related.
Wow.
And at that point, it was like, okay. And then I went head first and dived all the way in, and it's changed my life. It's been amazing. It's been an awesome ride.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Wow. First of all, very impressive. The fact that you took action during the whole lockdown thing, which many people, went into scare mode and self-loathing mode. And I
Yeah.
remember the time, that I also went into overdrive and I bought my kettlebells. I learned to kettlebelling better. I bought my ropes, doing some rope flow. Started my rope flow. I
Mm-hmm.
think I started before the pandemic, just before, a few months before. But I went overdrive. It gave me a perfect excuse to actually go to the park and defy those bastards by
Yes,
dancing with that flow. Huh? So
exactly.
I kind of relate with you, like, completely, like. And what did you felt like? Before we go into specifics and about the things that you do and the practices, and I know that you said already that you are a movement guy, so you were a sports person, you were a wrestler, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm understanding that wrestlers are actually very strong people, and I didn't know about wrestlers nothing, but having watched some of the videos about the training you do and everything, like, I'm like, oh man, respect, like, yeah, thumbs up for sure. So
Appreciate
before
that.
we go into the yeah, before we go into the how do you feel about the flow and why it's so important to you? Let us know a little bit about your sports history. Like, get a little bit more ground on why were you drawn into sports, into physical activity.
That's a great question. I appreciate that. I'll say something that a lot of people don't know about, and I really haven't spoken a lot about it on my Instagram. I did a little bit more early on when I first started this whole journey. But I had a pretty unique way in which I was raised. Um, my mother was diagnosed with a disease called SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, which is, I don't know if you've ever heard of ALS. That may sound familiar to you. It's what everybody did back in 2013 when they did the ice bucket challenge. Everybody's putting the ice buckets on their head,
Oh,
water, and everything. You can go look it up. That was a popular thing, I guess,
yeah,
about
yeah,
10 years ago now.
yeah.
But my mother had a version of that. basically.
Okay.
It's a similar cousin of a disease called SMA, and it's a motor neurological disorder, which basically means that your brain, your body, your brain is, you can think, you can talk, everything seems fine, but you're just slowly or really more quickly losing control over your body over time, which makes you age faster, which basically means that you're not able to move your body, and even in the smallest of motor functions, like moving your hand, talking, eating, things
Yeah.
like that. And so you just slowly get weaker and weaker and weaker over time, much faster than you would or otherwise. And so growing up, I had to do a lot of things to help my mother that a lot of 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds didn't have to worry about. I had to learn how to pick her up and put her onto bed or onto the couch, or take her to the restroom, and things like this that most kids don't really have to worry about. If they have parents, their parents are probably more than physically capable of taking care of themselves and the kid as well. And so
Yeah.
I had a unique disposition there that gave me a perspective about protecting and providing and taking care of loved ones, and what it meant for me as a man, especially as I got stronger, to focus on the things that helped me to be in a better position to do those things, and what that means to do that for a lifetime. And so I tried every sport growing up. I'm being honest. I'm also pretty highly ADHD. And so I was probably the kid out in the baseball field who, when they saw the golden retriever, would just leave and just start running, chasing the dog out in the field or whatever. But yeah, I played soccer, baseball, basketball, football, all of the conventional sports, but I just didn't have the attention span for any of them, or even just the singular interest to like want to work on my own time to really like invest in and get better at it. I think I would have been quite a bit better at all those sports had I just been more interested and spent more time on my own at home practicing them. But I just didn't, they just didn't really catch on to me. But then wrestling actually arrived to my state. I'm from Arkansas. It's a small state here in the South. A lot of people don't know about it, but wrestling was actually a late arriving sport to Arkansas. And when it did, I had already tried everything else at that point and jumped into wrestling and found it to be just an absolute perfect storm of an opportunity where I got to learn this amazingly difficult discipline. And I also didn't really have to worry about a lot of people, not as much competition in the beginning because it was still so new. And so I was able to gain a foothold in something that gave me a lot of confidence. And then from there,
But are you
I,
there? I lost you for a minute.
oh no, did I lose you?
Yeah, it's my connection. Something happened. Apologies. I don't know what. Actually, that's interesting.
That's okay. What's the last thing you heard?
About the wrestling that came to Arkansas, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
I
sorry,
remember.
it's the first time that happened. So apologies. If it happens again, we can. Yeah,
No,
it's
it's okay.
safe.
I don't think you'll ask much there. So,
Okay.
but yeah, it was new to Arkansas, and like I said, a lot of people, especially if somebody was already good at football or basketball or whatever, they weren't just jumping into wrestling. So I didn't probably have as much competition, but so as a result, I was able to gain a lot of confidence, and then um, I lost a few of my first few matches, but then I started winning, and I won more, then I won more and more and more.
Yeah.
By my senior year, I was our team captain and had the opportunity to take our team into the state tournament where we won our state, and I won as a state champion myself individually. So that
Wow.
was an awesome experience. And basically, it was like, even though I was a senior, which in America, that's the time, high school is usually the peak of a lot of people's athletic performance. Maybe not so much these days now that there's so many things like jiu-jitsu and wrestling and other things that people can continue doing thereafter. But
Yeah.
I was pretty dead set that even after high school, when I was going to get into college, that I was going to keep up my athleticism and like continue learning, because for me, it was like I had just gotten there. later in my high school years. And so
Yeah.
I guess that's when I got to college and started doing MMA and learning all these martial arts as well.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting things. You talked about confidence also, and you also talked about your mom that one of the reasons to get into sports and getting stronger was actually to be functional.
Yes.
And before I ask you the question, I think one of the reasons I host this platform here is to actually a little more, um, get more views, get more eyeballs into why we are doing, why maybe what are the reasons besides vanity, which are okay, to look good. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes people talk about this as a bad thing. I don't think
Mhm.
it is to look decently good, not specifically ex bodybuilder, super wow good, but at the same time, one thing that impresses me when I go to my villages and when I went the last time and saw my 93-year-old grandfather and my 91-year-old
Wow.
grandmother,
Wow.
and I saw them actually being very fucking active, like, and picking up 15 kilos, like 30 pounds or something. And I'm like, what? And they can actually hip hinge, or whatever.
Well, that's
S-
great.
Squat. And they're like 90 something. And I'm like, okay, most, even bodybuilders, many of them probably don't have the same functionality as those old people. Um, so my question always was for me also too, how can I be more strong for, that's why what you said is so, I relate so much, because how can I be there for my girlfriend? How can I pick up things where an old guy or
Mhm.
or an old lady, I have to carry her for something happens, who is going to be that guy there? Shouldn't I be one of the, at least one of those candidates to actually be of service, things like that people don't think about. Like, you go to the gym and think people know it's all about abs, all about a big chest. And from my experience with life and from how things are going on, by the way, and will go on over the next decade, being functionally strong, I think it's a priority, at least for me and for other people that I like. So yeah, what do you think about all these thoughts? Like, because you reference it, and what's your thinking about it? How do you talk about these things with friends, clients, strangers? Do you like get in conversation? What do you think about our modern culture with fitness? The goals that modern fitness has, the goals that functional people do have. What do you think about all these things?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we're starting to just now get into the heart of it. If I'm being honest with you, I think that fitness for a long time, it's interesting. Like you hear about things that our ancestors did hundreds and thousands of years ago in terms of what they did to be strong, and so
Right.
much of that was predicated on their ability to do what I consider to be two things: protect and provide. So, in my mind, a functional body, and I think this is valuable for men and for women, but being that I'm a man, speaking to men, I would say that the ability to protect and provide is the most important thing. So, to me, that means having a body that's ready and able to work, to do labor, to toil, whether it's bricklaying, building a house, or just working around your property where you live, your house, your apartment, whatever. The ability to do things, truly functional things, on a regular, routine, daily basis, especially for, like you said, like your family, like your girlfriend or your grandparents or parents or whatever. I think that's of utmost importance. And so I definitely think that your movement practice, whatever it is, your fitness, should make you better at those things. And I think the other thing that's pretty underrated, is very underrated, is also the ability to protect as well. And we don't think as much about it because most of us live in worlds and places that are very safe and convenient, but there's always the ever-present reality that anything can happen at any time. And that's not just in terms of somebody physically attacking you. That could also be a natural disaster. That could be if you get into a car crash, even
True.
if you step off the curb while you're walking down the street and you step in a weird way, having a body that is used to varying degrees of dynamic movement and varying degrees of stabilization through whether it's combat sports or training of some kind or using unconventional tools like maces, clubs, and kettlebells is, I think, crucially important. And so, you mentioned earlier, you talked about kind of the aesthetic of, bodybuilders and powerlifters and so forth. And I think that's important to know because, frankly, I think a good body is a body that looks good while it's moving. If I see somebody that is a good mover, you can see it. You don't have to look at their abs or try to think about how big their biceps are or whatever. You may notice those things, and they may be very filled out in those areas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good mover. You'll know if they're a good mover because you'll be able to see it, and the rest of their body, I think, will complement that very well. And to me, that's the more valuable piece that I care about, because you could spend years doing certain types of exclusive bodybuilding or powerlifting or what have you, doing traditional strict lifts, Olympic lifts. And if that's all you do and you're trying to just go for that aesthetic, the question is how functional is it? And how much range of motion have you potentially lost if, in fact, you've not spent the time performing functional range of motion movement? And the reality is when we get to the day where people that are doing functional movements and in range of motion using circular patterns and things of this nature, when those people get into the bodybuilding competitions and they're winning them, I think that'll look a lot better. But for now, it's still a conversation to be had, and I tell my clients this too. It's like, I don't want to ever come into a position where I'm not physically ready to do something, and there's a lot of that we can control, and so that's generally what I think can be accomplished by using a lot of, especially unconventional tools. I think you could go into a gym and do squats and do cleans and bench press and traditional lifts and do well with it. But I think if that's exclusively all you do, I think that you're missing out big time on a lot of things.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You nailed it. Wow. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting what you say. Um. I don't know
And there's
about
just,
the.
I mean, I guess one of the points, like, there's so many things about life. Life is random, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so your body should be preparing for the things that you will never be able to expect. If you think about a hero, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like if you think about somebody that's a hero, what is a hero to you? Or a superhero, or just a regular person that's considered a hero because they performed a heroic act. Well, they're not a hero until the moment comes that they have to rise up. And it's not something that they predict. It's always a situation where somebody is just in the right place at the right time and has the right mental fortitude and the training or whatever it is that they've done in their past parts of their life to prepare them to be able to excel and handle a situation when it arises, whether it's an attacker or a natural disaster or some accident that happens. A hero is somebody that rises up right in the moment because life happens. And that's the kind of thing that I think that a kind of peace of mind that I think we would all benefit from if we thought about it more often.
That's probably going to be video clipped. Thank you. So that's probably the best description of a hero that I've ever heard. So wow, yeah, that makes complete sense actually. Because like you say, like life literally throws you curveballs every time you don't expect them. Actually, sometimes it's even quite the opposite. Like you are relaxing and you are happy, pop, and you got the weird thing happening, and you got to react. And yeah, and it's very very interesting about what you say because seeing my grandfather and grandmothers being moving until their late, like until their death, um, and moving, really moving and walking as much as they can. I mean, to my mind, movement has to be there, and proper movement also, if it's possible, even better. For many reasons, because when I see them, I get inspired. It's not only
Mhm.
that they survive; you get inspired. They now inspire me, and I talk with you, and other people are inspired to actually explore movement. And like you say, when you sidestep on the sidewalk or whatever, and your ankle is like whoosh, ready
Yeah.
to get strained or something, but you did a lot of mobility work over the past 6 months, and now you're in just perfect position, which actually happened to me this month, like April, not May, April. Happened to me one time. Like I was here in Corfu Island, beautiful island in some
Hmm.
aspects, and I was just walking a little bit hastily because I didn't know the city, and I had a rendezvous, and I wanted to get there fast, and I was like, whoosh, and
Hmm.
nothing happened. At first, I was like, oh shit, I'll be in bed, but nothing really happened because I take care of my ankles and my mobility. I'm not perfect, but at least I do the basics. I do the basic work,
Hmm.
and that's very, very, very nice. So yeah, I can't say anything more. So I want to ask you a little bit about, because I'll put some videos from your Instagram. Of course, I'll do it so that people are their minds are blowing up like mine is every day. Every day I come up to one of your posts. I'm like, God damn it. Uh, I need some help. I'll probably get you as my coach at some point soon.
I'll have to
Um,
come visit you in Greece, and then I can show you some stuff there.
Well, I have a think about that, and I'll tell you offline. And maybe our friends here listening maybe are interested into that. So trust me. Give me a few minutes more, and I'll ping you.
All
There's
right.
something coming up soon in September. Anyway, how did you go? How did you start? Like, how did you start? Did you had like kettlebells? How did that progression start? And how did you come about and doing all these crazy flips, man?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually had kettlebells going back to like, I guess it was like 2014, 2015 when I got my first set of kettlebells. There was this, and again, this is like pre-social
Oh,
media for me. So no posting online, nothing,
yeah.
none of the crazy stuff yet, right? Like there was, I'll just go ahead and I'll promote them a little bit here. There was a husband and wife couple that I followed pretty well on YouTube. They go by the name of Fitness Blender. I think it's Kelly and Daniel is their name, and they've had a channel for literally like I don't know 15 years now or something for a very very long time. And I used to Daniel had a lot of great kettlebell stuff, and he did full workouts, so you could literally just do the workout with him. And so something that I
Yeah.
hope to eventually do one day as well, especially if I can get the proper space to do it in. But I started doing a lot of kettlebell stuff with their content, but it was all very basic, and there's nothing wrong with that. It definitely gave me a good, I was very familiar with the kettlebells before I started doing any of the stuff that I do now, but it was all very conventional Russian swing, kettlebell halo, doing clean press, Turkish get up, all that stuff. So I was doing that, like I said, years and years ago, while also training jujitsu and then teaching a kickboxing class on the side. So,
Oh, okay.
but what really kickstarted everything is when, like I said, when the pandemic hit and my kickboxing class got wiped out. And so then I bought the mace. And that's when I started to recognize that there was something deeper that I could really reach for. I think that people in general get this feeling like, if they just start exploring or start doing anything, that it's just going to be ridiculous or it's not going to make sense or they're going to waste their time or something like that. But it was at this time when I really started to explore, like, oh no, like I can, like it's worth it to take 15, 20, 30 minutes, put on some music, do what makes you feel comfortable, whether it's at your house or at the park. In my case, nobody was at the park. So I was going there like every day and getting under the sun, putting my bare feet in the ground, putting on some music, and just seeing how I can convey what I was feeling and putting it into my movement. And I can remember looking back on that time and just it was so strange. Like I mean I'm a single guy now. I was a single guy back then. I had no idea what was going to happen. Like I didn't know if we were it was just such a time of uncertainty. And this is like, again, March, April. April, May 2020, right in the height of the lockdowns, not sure what the future is going to look like. A lot of industries are being shuttered. At the time, I was, I think, selling software, some insurance software online through a company based out of Oakland. Anyhow, and I just, I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I started exploring, and that's when I started recording myself. And here's another little secret not so secret, that I'll share with everybody, which is what I learned when I recorded myself is I learned that I was seeing my lines, all of the clean lines that I was drawing, or the dirty ones, or the ones that weren't so clean. And honestly, one of the first things it makes me think of is like my wrestling training. So we used to film our wrestling matches. So that way afterwards, whether you win or lose, you could go back and what we call film review, where you review the film of your matches to see what you did well, what you didn't do well, etc. And so I basically started doing this with my mace practice, recording it and filming it, and then watching how I was moving. And I could see when I had lacking lines, or when I wasn't as clean, or I wasn't angled the right way. And so what I learned is, like, when I was putting up my camera and I had the mace in my hand and I would be doing my switches, I could see it was like, okay, no, I'm straight. But if I was turned a little bit to the side, I could see that too. So all of this helped me to kind of create an orientation where I basically learned that I needed to start turning on 90-degree and then 180-degree turns. So I turn 90 and then 180 degrees. Interestingly enough, I think the rope flow community probably does the best job of making this distinction. I think they call it north, south, east, west in terms of they call it cardinal directions. But it's super relevant. I think it's good for mace flow. I think it's good for kettlebell flow, because these are the lines that we move on. If you also think about like the 3 planes of movement, frontal, sagittal, so frontal, sagittal, and then transverse going across, the frontal and sagittal planes, if you just follow those 2 to start out with, there's a lot that you'll discover as you're learning these objects go across you through space. And so it's kind of a combination of elements, and then that my own sort of like I said, like my film study that helped me go, oh, okay, so when I turned 90 degrees this way, then I could hip hinge, like you were talking about. And then when I keep the mace there and I turn back, then I can push out and come up for a mill, and then do this low swing, and I can turn back and go back to my hip hinge. And these are the kinds of things that I teach people in my flow community now, where every day I'm trying to instill concepts in them. As much as I'm teaching them moves, I'm trying to teach them these concepts so that way they can then have the foundation and building blocks to then start to expand for themselves. And the mind just starts going out. Everything just starts expanding. And so when you start moving with the mace, you'll learn this, and then you pick up ropes, and I can teach you a lot of the same stuff with ropes. And then you can pick up the kettlebell and do the same exact thing. So that's how you can also start to improve and get better. And these are little things that I started figuring out along the way. And then once you really get really good at those lines, that's when you get comfortable to start doing things like letting it go and letting it fly through the air and toss it and stuff like that.
You make it sound so simple. But interesting. So that was exactly the quote unquote secret that you shared with us, I think, and with me, was is that you actually did the work and you analyzed. And I think speaking from my side, for myself, I still find it difficult to see myself in a camera. Even now talking, I would love not to be in the camera as much, but it's part of the deal. So I'm kind of okay, whatever. So, bottom line, in your opinion, filming yourself is actually a good tool to use for your self-education, right?
Even if you don't post it, I think it's important. Like I said, I tell my students this a lot. If there's something you're working on and you want to see it, or you're getting, especially if you're getting fascinated by it and you're doing lots and lots of reps, put up a camera, record it. Like it may seem kind of silly at the time, and it's like, oh, I don't have a social media channel, or I don't want to post this. But if you actually watch it, you'll recognize that you'll see all of the lines. and you'll be able to start to help separate them. And anyhow, I think they make a lot more sense of where your shortcomings are as well as your successes.
Okay then. Okay, coach. I'll because of you, man. I'll start to overcome my fear of seeing my freaking self doing ropes, and yeah, it was about time. So thank you for this.
And
And I guess
people
many.
will want to see it too, just so you know. So if you do decide to post it, people will love to see it because I do think it's good to share as well. But you don't have to. But if you decide to, there's a lot of people out there, regardless of where you are, they'll be inspired by the fact.
Thank you for
If,
this. Yeah,
even if you're just sitting here and you're just doing a matador on one side, you're just trying to work it, with the ropes or whatever. There'll
yeah,
be somebody out there that will be inspired by that and buy some ropes or decide to try it for themselves.
yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. I have to stop being such a. Uh, so I won't curse. But all right, and the things that you said about the three, the three planes,
Mhm.
that's one of the most fascinating things that are so simple but yet so profound to me, and I think to many people, I would guess, because most of us used to, at least I, and I guess many others, do just the frontal and the how do you call the other
Sagittal.
one?
Sagittal.
Sagittal,
Mm-hmm.
sagittal, and the transverse.
Mm-hmm.
Transfers. Okay. So the transfers is where all the gold is, in my opinion. Just observing the people cutting wood and the golfers and all that stuff. They use rotation every time. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
whoop, all the body goes like whoosh. It's not like woof. It's not like machines here, 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 here,
Right.
whatever. So that's one of the most important things. And so but again, I have to ask you, man. I'm curious. Okay, you try to breed the whole thing. You do the processes. When did you start just throwing up those kettlebells up in the air and they go up from your head? And I'm like, dude, like, oh god. I mean, I'm so in to try and improve myself and get to that stage, but aren't you like in the state of? I mean, probably I'm so amateur, and this question probably shouldn't be asked,
No, I don't know. It's a good question.
but for those of us, and I'm one of them, that are super amateurs in some of these aspects, at least the flow of kettlebells and throwing, and I haven't tried yet the mace. I'm very curious to try that out. But how did you start, like going from just picking up and pushing it to whoosh, to let it go, and how can you sense where it goes and then pick it the right time? So how fast did you learn it, by the way? And also,
Mhm.
what were your failures? Were they dangerous? How dangerous enough?
Good questions. All good questions. Okay. So, and I'm happy to report that I think I did it the wrong way, mostly. If I'm being honest with you, I mean, I guess I learned. There's a lot of ways to learn. You can go a harder, longer path, or you can go a shorter, easier one. So, but I guess the first one through the wall always gets bloody. And I'm not the first one to juggle kettlebells, certainly, but what I was and where I started was that I was one of the first ones to throw a mace. And that's actually where I started. I don't know that I ever did I don't know that I ever once juggled a kettlebell before throwing the mace. I think the mace, especially the 10-pound, once I got it, because the first mace I got was a 15-pound mace. And I knew pretty quickly that I needed to go ahead and buy a 10-pound as well. So it didn't take me but maybe a month, maybe less than a month after I got my 15-pound mace that I bought my 10-pound mace. And I started throwing that guy. And, it was just a moment in time when I was just feeling it and feeling the expression of it. I think I started out doing kind of a half turn with it, which, would basically be I take it, I'll throw it, I'll cast it down in front of me, and then the globe comes up, and then I'll just let the globe go over once and then catch it, and then I'll do something else and then come back to it. But now I can do two end over ends throwing catches with the mace, which to this day I've never seen anybody else do. And maybe people shouldn't do it
Wow.
just yet. I I've actually had some people that have become my clients because they want to learn how to do it, but I always preface them. It's like, we've got to work up because I can't just have you throwing the mace willy-nilly. But
I want to learn to do it, so I'll get
well,
you.
and here's
I'll
the
get
thing.
your coaching.
So let's talk about the plane of it. I learned, so you can throw the mace totally safely, 100%. And the way that you really do it, I recommend, is going on the frontal plane. I'm thinking about grabbing a mace, and then yeah. In fact, actually, I will. I'll grab this one right here for a second.
All right, live
All right.
demo. Okay.
So I'm not gonna throw it, but
Okay.
but I would start like basically like this, either like this, or grabbing it here at the mid mace, just like this. It may be easier. It's probably easier for most people to start right here. And honestly, Jason, what I would do is I would pull it, okay, and then I would let it go, and I would get out of the way.
Oh.
So
Okay.
if I'm throwing it and it's going to go this way, I'm going to throw it, and I'm going to actually I'm going to walk away like this.
Okay.
So the goal of that, and you'll hear this being said by a lot of the kettlebell jugglers as well. The goal of that is that you need to let it drop. Like, one of the first things you need to do is just watch it go all the way and get out of the way. So you let it go up, and I would start walking kind of with it, but diagonal away from it. So it was like we'd start together. So if I get my angles, I start together, and then we walk, and then I would walk away as it's flying through the air. And so I got to kind of just mentally watch and study its path of travel. And eventually I learned that I could reach my hand out and, just try to catch it. And if I caught it, great. If I didn't, it wasn't going to come and hit me in the face or hit me in the body or something like that. But what was important is drawing those clean lines. So as I was turning, I would then pull and then let go. So anyhow, I started doing that a lot with the 10-pound mace, and I didn't always do it. So I didn't have that kind of formula down so clean when I first started doing it. I can assure you of that. But I started doing it, and I got better at it. And I got to the point where I could throw it and then walk with it. I could throw it while I was standing still. I could throw it from one hand and catch with the same hand, or I could throw it with one hand and catch with the other hand. And it was all from just watching this path of travel happen over time. So mace tossing is way more difficult, in my opinion, than a kettlebell. Okay, so that's a good thing. Like, most people probably should start by throwing a kettlebell if they're going to do anything. And I think kettlebell tossing is a pretty is establishing itself very quickly as an art form. And frankly, it's been an art form in Russia for like over 100 years. So it's really not new. It's just new to everybody in the West, pretty much. So I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, I
didn't know that. Yeah,
I had to learn that over this past year as I started studying it a little bit more.
Wow.
But the kettlebell, because the kettlebell is only, this kettlebell, right? It's only about this big, so it's not that long. So when you first start juggling a kettlebell, the easiest thing, probably the best thing you'll do, and I think that many of my fellow jugglers and kettlebell enthusiasts, kettlebell crazies out there would attest to this. One of the first things you do is you do your regular kettlebell Russian swing, and then at the top of that swing, when it hits its peak, when it hits that level of float right there, you can either push the handle down or push it up with your thumb. You can either push it up with your thumb or down with your hand, and it will create a rotation. And the best thing to do is get on some grass and let that dude just drop. Let it fall. Go right in front of you, flip it, and let it fall to the ground, and just watch it. It might hit the ground and bounce back once, but it's not going to come back and hit you in the face or anything like that. It's probably not going to get anywhere near your feet, but just watch it as it falls down to the ground. And you may potentially do that 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 times before you ever even try to catch it. Because what you want to do is you want to get your mind used to the fact that it's going to drop. and it's okay if it drops. The key, I've seen a couple people talk about this. One of the keys is that you don't want to chase the handle. So you never want to like reach forward or like try to grab something that you're not going to be able to grab. Now, I do some of that when I'm doing some of my lateral movements a little bit, but generally speaking, you want to have your clean posture so that way whenever you catch it, the momentum will continue to allow you to make the next swing. So that way you can just keep going with it. And that's how you're able to get these crazy, multiple flips end over end, keep catching it, because you've just progressively gotten that timing down. So it all starts with one flip right in front of you. And then from there, you'll do one flip end over end, and you'll get used to it dropping, kind of like going like a rainbow, and then just landing on the ground. And again, you won't catch it right away, but after a few reps, eventually you will. And then you can get 2 spins and 3 spins. And then eventually you can go behind the back or whatever else. So like anything, it just takes time. But I do believe that we're quickly establishing it as a true art form. And honestly, if anybody's scared to do it, I recommend, there's a lot of ladies that are picking it up. I recommend watching either Shada up in New York. I don't know if I can pronounce her last name, like Shregi. I'm going to butcher it. I don't know if she's Egyptian.
I'll put the profile in the link below. And,
I don't know what her ethnicity is. She's up in New York with Colin Daring up there, and they work together. She does a lot of great kettlebell juggling. Another really inspiring person to me is Steph Jo Sorensen. I remember watching Steph Jo Sorensen. She's up in Minnesota with her husband, Bill. They've been mace and club swingers for a long time, longer than I have. But I don't know that Steph got into kettlebell juggling until a year or 2 ago, maybe. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think she's been doing it for a long time either. And now she's doing some amazing stuff. She just bought a 10 kilogram kettlebell that I recommended to her the other day from Titan Fitness that I've enjoyed quite a bit. Not too expensive, pretty cheap, ships all over at least the US for most of your US followers and so forth. And, she's doing amazing stuff with it. So really anybody can do it. Anybody from any background, skill level, age, gender, it doesn't matter. And it really just starts by getting used to the kettlebell. I don't know that now. I'll say this as well. If you don't have any experience with the kettlebell, I don't know that you want to start juggling. Maybe I think that there's probably somebody that's going to end up doing that. But I think it is helpful if you learn a lot of the kettlebell basics, like the basic swing, pull up to a clean, press, snatch, kettlebell halos, around the worlds, getting used to just the kettlebell moving around your body in a secure fashion. But I think that kettlebell juggling is where your mind starts to expand and where the novelty of the movement really comes. And that's where, to me, it's a lot like mace and clubs, because these things in my mind are so valuable, not only because they strengthen your joints and make you stronger, help your posture, but they're so fascinating for the mind, because once you get that pattern, once you get that flip and it hits your other hand just right, you catch it and you keep that momentum going, it's so satisfying, because I find myself all the time, hours after I've done my movement practice, going, wait, I'm going to try this thing next time. Or I'm going to go this direction. Or I'll see somebody else doing it, and I'll be, and the inspiration just comes like a circle. So that's the other thing I would say about all of this, is that the cognitive fascination that your brain and your mind can get hooked on makes it so that way you don't even feel like you're working out anymore. I tell people this all the time. I stopped working out in 2020. I used to do HIIT workouts, and I was very disciplined at my exercise, specifically trying to get workouts that would get my heart rate up, and that I would do a bunch of burpees or push-ups or squats or whatever. And none of those things are bad in and of themselves, but what I recognized is I was also spending a lot of mental energy just getting ready to do it, and like having to say, okay, Jared, you got to do it. You got to do it. Now I'm like, when can I get done with my stuff? When can I go outside? When can I toss the kettlebell? When can I start learning about practicing these routines, and you can easily spend, once you get going with this, and I know you'll get going with this. Once you do, your mind will start to really just key in on the fascinating aspects of the patterns that you'll learn, and it's total rabbit hole.
Seems like it, yeah. And by the way, I'm completely in agreement. Like the flow, the thing about the mental thing, every time I used to go into gyms back in the day, trying to do something there, it was always like, okay, many things come up in mind, like, okay, yeah. It was very repetitive, and and also lacked a little bit of naturality. That's my word,
That's a good
naturality,
way
some flow, and some
Mhm.
background that I can be aspired to be in or inspired to be in. So exactly how you say about the flow with the kettlebells and the mace, I feel the same with the rope now.
Mhm.
I'm progressing now from intermediate slowly. I'm getting into more levels slowly, even though there are countless levels. Like people are doing crazy stuff with that too. So I'm guessing you are more or less right. That's what I'm just reinforcing your message. I think many of us see people like yourself and others in the rope and in those in the flow space. Let's call it in the strength
Yeah.
flow space.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can be, if you let it be, it can be a little bit discouraging if you are not in the philosophy of, okay, one step at a time. Because you see guys like yourself, I see guys others, and I'm like, holy, like I'm like, oh, whew, like that sounds like almost impossible to my mind right now. But at the same time, I remember that when I started just trying to swing a rope, I was looking so dumb, and I was so happy to start. So,
Mhm.
and where I'm now, 3 years and some later, from where I started, like, oh my god, like miles away. So I kind of reinforce your message, I think, here, because I think you are true, and thank you for clarifying this to me also, because I had some self doubts about the maze and the throwing up those kettlebells. So thank you.
Well, yeah, and I'll say too, it's like I didn't start with rope flow or even with the kettlebell juggling clubs. None of that. I started really with the mace, and I had to get. I mean, I saw people doing ropes and doing the kettlebell and stuff, but I told this to people even recently. I taught last Sunday. I taught people how to do a dragon roll. So I don't know. Do you know how to do dragon rolls yet? Have you done them with the rope?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The dragon rolls, yeah. So I was teaching some people dragon rolls this weekend, and they picked it up like this, like super quick, really easy. But the first time I tried to learn a dragon roll was in Maui, Hawaii, for the very first Maui Fit in June of 2021. And I was early in my rope flow journey. I had ropes for maybe 3 months, and my brain broke. I was on the beach. I was on the beach after this long day. I had learned the coiling core. We did a lot of landmine stuff. We were doing mace flow and kettlebell juggling, and then we got to the beach, and we're doing rope flow. I'm with Slush Ropes was there, Bea, and a lot of people from the community, and uh, somebody was trying to teach me dragon roll, and my brain just broke. And I'm sitting there going, I know I can do this. I just can't get. And I was so frustrated. But yeah. So anyhow, you can. My recommendation definitely is it's okay to get good with one thing, and then once you get really good with it, rope flow is a good example. Then you pick up a mace, and all of a sudden, you're going to have patterns that are going to be way easier with the mace or with the kettlebell, and it's all going to start to click over time. So that's definitely a good point. You'll be able to pick up a mace and do a lot more with it because of what you've already done with the ropes.
Okay then. All right, people, listen up. Where can people find you? By the way, let's slowly close this awesome, in my opinion, interview and chat. I enjoyed that much, so much. And where can people find you, Jared?
So Instagram is probably my main hub right now. You can also find at the top of my bio is the link to my Flow community. It's only $15 a month. I upload a new video every single day. So it's right now it's mostly May stuff, But I do a lot as well with kettlebells and ropes, and it's really a lot of basic stuff, a lot of things to teach people and concepts for them to feed off of. So I definitely recommend that. Only $15 a month. So you can find me on Instagram. It's again Jared Michael Thomas, and then you can also find me on YouTube, also at Jared Michael Thomas. So that's it for right now. I'm gonna add some others, like I think I'll be Ensemble before long, and a few other platforms, but that's it right now.
Okay. Sounds awesome. Okay, guys, I'll put it down below in the links, of course, in the description, everything that Jared shared today, um, everything. And find him there. Go blow your minds again with what he's doing. And do not get discouraged like I did, because he just explained everything in this interview. You can rewind it and go back and listen it. I will do it every time I'll get discouraged. Right now, I'm going to listen to our interview here. So please do the same. If you get a little bit hopeless when you see the guy throwing. And last thing before we go, why did you choose that space where you're doing the things, the Parthenon? Let's talk about it.
Oh yeah, I gotta go to
Yeah,
the
before we go,
yeah.
yeah.
So this is, you're seeing my house. I have never made any content in here, and I don't really plan to. It's just maybe at some point I will, but it's just not really. It's just kind of my space, So, but that said, I've also just thought, I want to go. And let me just say this too. There's a lot of people that record content in their homes, in rooms, in houses, and it's totally fine. There's no problem with it. For me personally, though, I always just thought that it would just make more sense if I went out, especially if I could find a quiet place in nature, put my bare feet on the ground, get sun on my skin, and that's where I wanted to, that's it. And I wanted to do, yeah, and break a sweat, move my body, just do some natural things, connect to the earth and all that. And so that was really my first inspiration, was like, I'm going to do this outside where it's already really pretty. I don't need a nice backdrop. I've got Mother Nature, and there's a lot of really pretty things by where I live here in Nashville. And then, of course, one of them is the Parthenon. So Nashville is also blessed with a number of parks that are, or I guess I should say I'm blessed living here in Nashville, because the city has so many pretty parks and places to see. One of which is Centennial Park, home of the only full-scale size replica of the original Parthenon in Athens, Greece. And it's been here since 1897, I think, which is 100 years after Tennessee became a state. We created the Centennial Exposition, which was a big fair, and they just built a wooden replica at the time of the Parthenon, but people loved it so much that after they tore it down, they decided to build it back out of stone. And so, even though, as I understand it, the real Parthenon in Greece has been, destroyed and torn up through war and conditions and historic events throughout time that have deteriorated it. Ours is what the original looked like. It's all still, it's fully intact, and people can go inside. There's a museum and so forth. But yeah, I go out there. It's literally 15-20 minutes from my house. I was out there this morning teaching a client, and so I may send you that picture, Jason. I took a picture of the Parthenon this morning, and it's a great site. It's an amazing place because there's tons of art that happens out there. People come out with bands, and they have the symphony there, but then they also have people out there playing soccer or sports or doing martial arts or doing breakdancing. My friends that are I have a bunch of friends that do capoeira and breakdancing, and they're always out there. And then you get me, who's out there juggling kettlebells and doing my best to look like the statues inside of the building. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And maybe one of these days you make a trip to the US, I will 100% love to take you to go visit.
That's a goal. That's a goal, man. We'll do that. just give me a little bit more time to hone my mace skills first.
Hey, if you come here, we'll upgrade them while you're here. I promise you. You can
Okay,
do a lot of
okay,
moves.
that's a deal, man. Yeah. Okay, I hold you. I will hold you to that. All right.
Do it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, the freaking replica. Whew. And you are going to come here at some point into the real thing.
I
I
would
mean,
love that.
both are real, but come to the ancient stone, the Acropolis rock, and it's still magnificent. Funny enough, even though it's bombarded by the Turks, by everybody,
Hmm.
burned down by the Persians, whatever. Everybody's destroying it. But if you come there, it's like holy cow! Like if you imagine it, you can imagine how it would be in full scale. Oh my god,
I
full
bet.
view of the city, until the port. Like holy cow. Anyway, so man, Jared, I am glad you came by here. I really appreciate your time, man, and everything, your vibe, everything. I really appreciate it. I hope that at some point we do a part two,
Yeah,
in the
that'd be good.
near. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have. I have many more questions, and I think maybe the audience will have some. That being said, thank you for coming on, man, and please stay for a moment after the
Mhm.
recording ends. And anybody else, ciao, ciao. And do not forget to go check Jared, who's there and greeting us from his ether. From where are you again? Tennessee?
Nashville, Tennessee, Music
Nashville,
City,
Tennessee. Oh,
home
man.
of country music.
Okay, I'll be there. And ciao, ciao, everybody. Yeah. Go check Jared out and see you in the next episode of Movement and Flow and Water. Ciao, ciao.